Welcome to Creative Chat, the show in which creativity is celebrated and explored with a little therapy thrown in. Each show brings artists from different modalities together to discuss their art, their creative process, and how we all are interconnected. Tune in today to find out how with your host, Dr. Judi Bloom, and entertainer, Richard Skipper.
Hello, Judi.
Hi, Richard. How are you today?
I am doing great. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous day here in New York. The sun is shining. It's 78 degrees here in New York. The only issue is flowers are in bloom, and so is the pollen.
That's right. Everybody's sneezing their heads off, right?
I am coughing my head off today. I mean, it's everywhere. So what are you celebrating today?
What am I celebrating? I'm celebrating. It's springtime. It's daylight savings time. I love daylight savings time. I wish it was all the time.
Me too.
And just the joy of being in a beautiful environment and having gratitude for everything that we have in our lives.
Same here. And it's been a crazy week. It's been a rock and rolling week in the news everywhere. But for the next hour, you and I are going to celebrate three incredible people who are making a difference in theater. And I'm so excited because our first guest is someone that you've brought to the table. And I'm always excited when you bring someone. And this has been a long time waiting to get to this point. You brought Bryce Alexander to my attention in February. We put it off because all of March, we were celebrating Cabaret Month, but he very patiently waited, and he's here today, and we're going to talk about Naples Players Theater in Naples, Florida, which is where you live. Tell us about this theater and how you met Bryce and what it is about Bryce that wanted you to have him on the show today.
Well, Naples Players Theater is a community theater here in Naples, Florida, and it's located on Fifth Avenue, which is the premier high-end shopping restaurant street, if you will, here in Naples. And when I moved here, being a theater person, I started going to shows there, checking it out, seeing what was going on, and then I realized that most of the people who were working there were all volunteers, right? So I volunteered. That's what you do, right? So I volunteered to be an usher or a bar back or whatever they need. And in the process, got to know the theater a little bit and what it means to the community, because it's not just a theater. They also have incredible programs for people with disabilities. They work with the school system to bring theater to middle school and high school students and involve them in the theater. They have programs where they're really using improv theater as therapy. So of course, all of that really appeals to me. And Bryce is the man behind all this. And now they're doing a $20 million renovation of the theater itself. So I figured this is a good time to have him on.
Well, let's meet him. Bryce Alexander, there he is. Hello, Bryce. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Okay.
And I love everything that Judi just said, because I have been in theater my entire life. This year marks my 44th year of being in New York. And I've always credited my hometown community theater for opening those doors for me 50 years ago. It's hard to believe that it was 50 years ago that I stepped on stage for the first time with a community theater. And I know that so many people in the theater, whether they be gay, straight, or those kids that feel that they are outsiders, they always feel that they belong when they find themselves in a community theater. And the word community is the most important aspect of community theater. What is it about community theater that resonates so strongly with you?
Well, I think, you said it best, which is community theater is all about the community. And so at the Naples Players, we talk constantly about how we are a theater for community, right? And it sounds silly to say community theater is theater for community, but so many people may misunderstand why it is that we see community theater as a fundamental value to every city in America. And so from the Naples Players perspective, we're sort of like the community theater and love on steroids. So we're fortunate enough to be here in Naples, Florida. And so we operate with a professional staff of 30 and an operating budget over $4 million and serve 55,000 people a year. And our audience is on top of 10,000 plus students in our education program and 700 annual volunteers. And so when you think about the theater that way, it's a huge community. And a traditional, regional theater will have that breadth and reach as well. But how many of those people get to be involved and see that their neighbors and friends are the ones who are working backstage or on stage to make the magic happen? So we see that our mission is to build community through the transformative power of theater. And that may mean that you get the opportunity to perform on stage. It may also mean that we use theater therapy to come and help veterans with PTSD, or we partner with a local hospital so that people who are experiencing the oncology department have the opportunity to use improv to express the traumas they're going through, but not just them. Their family members who are sitting next to them in the beds in the hospital also to come and participate in their own class about improv and how it is that you accept the things that are coming your way. And so we constantly talk about how if you were able to use theater not only as a tool to connect with your neighbors or to express yourself in a way that maybe you don't have an opportunity to elsewhere, as you were alluding to, but also if we could connect with veterans or people with Alzheimer's or autism or Parkinson's or any of those things, imagine how America would value the arts when they see the impact that an organization like this one has on their own town.
Well, do you think that America, you bring up a very interesting point, because a lot of people, and I don't even think that people are even aware of it when they go to the theater sometimes. They buy their tickets, they go to the theater, and it's very interesting. And I think that COVID woke a lot of people up, because until COVID happened, everyone always thought you buy your tickets, you go to the theater, the curtains are going to go up and a show's going to happen. And then for the first time in our history, it didn't happen. Theaters shut down around the country and people were not able to come together in a collective force and go out to see theater. But I don't think that I think that most people take it for granted. When you buy your tickets, you're going to show up, everything's going to happen. I don't think a lot of people really understand, nor should they really. They should be able to just go in and sit down and have a nice evening. What it takes for the show to go on night after night after night. And thank you, Judi, for being a volunteer and doing these things, because, doing community theater, doing summer stock, doing all those things where you're cleaning bathrooms, you're doing pulling. It used to be, I think everything's computerized now. I used to pull the curtains, to open the curtains of the theaters, and sweeping the stage, doing whatever it took to get the show going on those nights. So it takes a village.
It does take a village. And I think that also the whole idea of community theater is community. This is something that's open to everyone. And that's really important. It's very inclusive, right? Look at our society today. It's all about, people, getting on various sides of the battle, right? But this is not like that. Community theater is about bringing everyone together, and people, especially people who may feel like, they don't have a place, they don't have a group, they're a bit of an outsider in some way. This is a place where they can meet other people who also feel that way and connect. And I think that's such a huge part of what it means to be in a community theater. And Bryce, I'm wondering what appealed to you about that whole idea, because obviously you could have gone in lots of different directions. You could have decided to, work on Broadway or whatever, but you chose community. So what was that about for you?
I think it's about helping to fix the sort of American values that are related to the arts and theater, and specifically in the way that we've trained all of our artists in America to believe that they have to be starving artists in order to suffer for the art that they create. And so, especially in an age where things are more expensive than ever, and we're evaluating how the industry treats its artists, you come to this point where you say, well, you can be a working equity actor in the United States and make $400 a week. And you have to make sure that you work, whatever it is now. You have to work 5 months out of the year to have health insurance at $400 a week. Well, what about the people who, want to have a child or get married or live a life that doesn't require them to be destitute or work 7 jobs? And so in that way, the Naples Players is really interesting in that here we are, a community theater that does not pay its actors at all, but allows people who are doctors or lawyers or electricians or teachers or stay-at-home moms the opportunity to still have a career as an artist where they can express themselves at the same quality as other major regional theaters around the country. And what's cool about our model is, at Christmas time, for example, we have the opportunity to bring down Broadway conductors to conduct an orchestra and a cast full of volunteers. And it's nice that in New York it's freezing in the winter, and so Florida's a really nice place to come visit, and that's a wonderful reason for them to come here. But not only do they escape the harsh winters of New York City, but like you, Richard, a lot of them have their start in community theater. And so when they come back and they work with people who are here, not because they are relying on the money, but because they're so passionate about the art, there's a real sense of community and camaraderie and a true expression of the art that sometimes can be missing. And so where else in America can you volunteer to audition at a theater and then get conducted by someone from Broadway? And that's what's so unique about this model. And I think that's what's so motivating to me.
I want to share with you that yesterday afternoon, I interviewed Toni Tennille, Captain and Tennille, and she just did a production of Hello, Dolly in a community theater. She didn't get paid. She was there as a community theater actress. And she said it was one of the most glorious experiences of her life. She was there, and she said from the first day of rehearsal that she was there as an equal. We're going to get back to you in a moment. I hope that you'll stick around with us for the full show. But I want to ask you, have you ever thought that millennials are killing musicals?
Well, I certainly have had a thought that millennials may kill the structure of future subscription models.
Well, I have to ask you that question because that is the name of a musical that is about to open off Broadway in just a few days. And we happen to have the person who wrote the music for this show.
Amazing.
And, but before we bring her on, we're going to get just a glimpse of that. Let me just remove your banner so it doesn't take up her screen. And we're going to bring her on, and that's Nico Juber. And you're all in for a treat because my dear friend, Clea Blackhurst, is among one of the trio that's in this number. You're in for a treat. Here it is.
Hey, baby, your mom and Auntie Brenda think I've never done this before, and of course, they know everything. Okay, Boomer. When you were kids, I'd send you out to play in the backyard every day. We didn't have a fence, but you're okay. I'd sit inside, I'd smoke a cigarette, you'd both be at each other's necks. But somehow you both survive. Realize things have changed, but some things remain the same. That kids grow up and blame you for everything. I won't say I told you so, but I
I'm used to hearing her do Ethel Merman. So to hear her do this is so unusual. That came out of your head. That's amazing.
A whole musical came out of my head.
I know.
I don't know how to explain it. Yep. I actually wrote book lyrics and music. I'm like Chick Jonathan Larson. I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, congratulations. And it's about to open off Broadway here in New York. That, of course, was 54 Below. So you start at the top and then you keep going.
Well, I mean, this show's been in development for over 4 years now. And I picked a great time to make the pivot into musical theater right before a global pandemic. So we did a lot of development of the show virtually, which is actually how Clea has been involved. She was in some of the virtual readings that we did, 2 of them, and then the reading we did last year, plus the 54 Below show. But, I come from, my family is a musical theater. My parents have written musicals before. I knew it was a thing you could do. I didn't know that I could do it until I had my millennial existential crisis and wrote one. So
now, your father was part of a little band that I think a few people.
Yeah, right.
He was the lead guitarist in Paul McCartney's band Wings. So that was, just a little band.
Just a little thing there. Yeah.
Just a little thing. And so I grew up around it. My sister's a pop songwriter. My mom is a writer. I mentioned she's a lyricist, librettist also. So I just kind of grew up thinking it was really normal to to do these things. And I was the weird one that wasn't doing them because I was working in marketing. I worked in high-tech marketing for 15 years and was always writing on the side and kind of, and I had this break between jobs and my kids were old enough that they were in school. And I just sat down and wrote a show and kind of was like, whoa, what just happened?
Wait, so Nico, I want to hear, how are millennials killing musicals?
Well, I mean, it's a provocative title. So it's meant to, first of all, make you laugh. So, it's a comedy, right? And then, as an elder millennial myself, we have, I don't know, Bryce, if you are, whoever's a millennial knows, we've been accused of killing everything from beer to sex. I mean, it's just every headline you've seen is millennials are killing this and that. And so in a way, it's sort of taking it back. But in the story itself, you have the main character, Brenda, who is a single mom ready for love and creativity in her life when her younger sister, who's an influencer, shows up pregnant, completely unprepared. And this is like the bomb we know is going to go off. This baby's going to come. She thinks it's going to be like a Kardashian and make her tons of money on social media, and she has no idea what she's in for. There's another mom at the kid's school we only know as Jake's mom, and her life is actually falling apart. So there's other characters too, but these 3 main women are trailed by a Greek chorus of social media filters, basically Instagram filters, who are messing with their lives. And these filters are using a millennial kill list to make the women feel badly about themselves so that they need the filters even more, because their existential threat is going out of existence and people moving on from technology. So this millennial kill list is lobbed at them through the whole show. And it's funny at first, and then it becomes totally oppressive by the end of it, kind of mirroring the way that that's happened to us as a generation. So that's like the real nutshell overview of how we got a wacky title like that.
No, was this always the title of the show?
The very first draft title was called Filters, and then it quickly changed to Millennials Are Killing Musicals, because filters sounds like it could be about coffee. I mean, it's not funny. So, but it's been since almost day one.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned earlier that you grew up with all this creativity always around you.
Yeah.
And you eventually, I mean, you went in a different direction.
Yes.
Were you fighting the creativity, or because it was there, did you feel that there was a pressure to live up to the creativity that was around you? Or did you feel that there was a pressure on you that otherwise was not on, let's say, the rest of us who didn't necessarily grow up in that world?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a really multifaceted answer because I didn't mention also on my mom's side of the family, my grandfather created Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch. His name was Sherwood Schwartz.
Yes.
So I really had like all of these creative geniuses around me who like truly creative geniuses. That's all. It is a lot to live up to, whether it's on the music side or the writing side, any of those. And I always did. I always wrote and I always played music, and I made an album in high school and I used to play in college. The big thing that came in is that I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 19 in college. And so I went through cancer treatment, and I went back to school, but there was no Obamacare at that point for us elder millennials. I needed benefits. I was going to go off of my parents' insurance or come off of my parents' insurance. And I was good at the business stuff, and I liked high tech. And so I worked for Apple. I was at the company Adobe for 13 years because I love, I worked on the creative products. So I got to stay engaged with my creativity. But I just thought, no, I need the stability. I need I need all the the benefits, all that stuff. And I really just kind of I suppressed it and I stopped it. And then it really just exploded at a certain point. And I'm so practical that I was like, I don't know. I wrote a music. I mean, who writes a musical? That's a wild thing.
You write a musical.
I know. Well, now I know that. But at the time, and I kept doing, we do readings and stuff, and people were like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens with this. And I'm like, what do you mean? I did it. It's done. I didn't understand kind of the rigor and the process that you go through. But it's just, I kept getting little pats on the head from the universe. And I think that's what's really nice about theater, especially. There are awards that you can win and recognition you can get. During the pandemic, I won an award with the National Alliance for Musical Theater. For a short musical I wrote. They did a call for new 15-minute musicals, and I actually won a national award for that. And I wrote a song, it was like a Welcome Back to Broadway thing with a collaborator, and we won that with the Drama League. And Millennials was an O'Neill semifinalist like 2 times in a row. First time I submitted it. So it was sort of like, okay, yeah, I get it. Okay, I should do this. But I was the first one to say, oh, this is, I don't know if I can do this, but I think it's been a journey of kind of standing in the confidence of, okay,
do you feel that now that you have found this is it for you, that this is exactly where you're meant to be?
Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing is that because we're being produced this off Broadway. We have a great producing organization. It's a nonprofit called Out of the Box Theatrics. And they've been incredible to work with. My director, Sierra Renee, most people know her as a Broadway star. I know her as an incredible director. And she's my commercial producing partner. And so I'm doing all these things. I'm doing the, branding and this and that. A friend of mine keeps saying, this is like your Slumdog Millionaire moment. Like all of these things you've ever done have suddenly like, oh, we need a banner ad. I can do that. So it truly feels like I don't know what else there is on this planet that would use every single one of my skills like a musical would. So
well, those doors are going to keep opening, and just let them happen. I mentioned earlier that it was 50 years ago that I started with my own community theater. Just a few days ago, about a week or so ago, I get Google alerts, and somehow I got a Google alert for a new theater that's opening in my hometown or just outside of my hometown. And when I hear about a new theater that's opening anywhere, I get excited because these days you hear about things that are closing. So right. I wrote to the theater and I told them who I was and that I was from Conway, South Carolina, just outside of Myrtle Beach. And Brian Coons from the theater contacted me, and here he is. Congratulations, Brian. Brand new theater. And you've also appeared at Theater of the Republic, my hometown theater. But are you originally from Delaware? I know that you did theater in Delaware.
The Philadelphia area.
Philadelphia.
Yep.
How did you end up in South Carolina?
But visiting for about 5 years, we'd keep visiting. And then finally I said, hey, good time to move to the beach and get involved in local theater there. And here I am.
So, Brian, before we talk about your theater, we talked earlier with Bryce about community theater. What does community theater mean to you?
Well, some of the comments Bryce made about the community, and you have everyone, you know, with our group, we don't have any paid staff. We're all volunteers. We all have day jobs. So everyone, you know, the actors, the directors, the stage crew, the ushers, everyone is a volunteer. They want to be here to support the arts in the area.
Now, Theater of the Republic has been around a long time. I mean, Theater of the Republic was established in 1969. It's always been a community theater. Tim McGee, who is the artistic director of the theater, for the first time, I think it was probably about 20 years ago, was brought on as an artistic director of the theater. But Myrtle Beach has grown a lot since when I was a kid growing up there. There are a lot of theaters and performing arts venues that have opened in Myrtle Beach since I was there. It takes a lot of guts to open a new theater, especially in an area like Myrtle Beach. What was it? How did this new theater come to be, and how's it going so far?
Yeah, well, what had happened is, you know, we have the Theater of the Republic, a very well-known, very prestigious theater. You know, the very, very great reputation, and you know, I've been on their stage twice now and have loved the experience and the people that are involved. We had a couple other theaters that unfortunately closed after COVID. And our founder, Steve Marriott, said, hey, I want to open a theater. And I said, you know, that's my dream, is to kind of retire and be more into the marketing communications, as well as do some things on stage. And he said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Let's look for venues. So we got the support of the local Moose Lodge to allow us in their theater. Our goal is to stay here about 2 years and then hopefully find a place of our own that we can call home.
Mm-hmm. That's the moose behind your head. Yep,
it is.
So there it is, the moose. So what is your main role with this theater?
So my main role, because I told Steve, hey, I really want to learn about box office, and I wanted to involve into theater management of some sort and find out what that's all about. So my first goal is to learn the ticketing system, which I'm the operator. So I handle all the tickets. I have a full-time job, but I do this part-time, and I get the tickets and I arrange for the ushers. This current show that we're doing, Curtain Up, I'm the stage manager. So you might hear some noise in the background. We're getting ready for our rehearsal tonight. We open next week, so it's pretty exciting. And then I'm hoping to get back on stage. I'm going to audition next week for one of our third show of the season. So we'll see how that goes.
I want to hear from all of you what you think the biggest challenge is for you operating in the kind of venues that you're operating in. Bryce?
Mine's publicity. Publicity and getting the word out.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's go with this. Brian, in today's world, what is the biggest challenge that you face when it comes to getting the word out? And what is your main source in terms of getting the word out?
Well, right now we're using Facebook as the primary means. There's a lot of groups within the Myrtle Beach area, the different, like a Garden City, Surfside Beach. So they have different groups. So we get out there, dinner groups. We figure that's a good time to go out to dinner and then come see the show. We've had great support of the news media. They've been coming and doing a little feature right before each show and interviewing people on our cast. And I'm looking now at different other marketing alternatives. I talked to some people from Value Pack today to see if that's something that we'd want to use. But cost right now is we don't have budget for a lot of this advertising dollars right now. So it's been a challenge. So I'm looking to learn more about that. I'm going to be reaching out to other theater groups and see what they do.
So Bryce, what about for you? What's the biggest challenge that you
I think that the biggest challenge for the Naples players is that there's a pretty significant shift in each generation's values of volunteering. So the greatest generation now is sort of phasing out a little bit as they take it even a little more easy. And the greatest generation is very loyal to one or two organizations. The following generation is a little more inclined to be participating in 8 or 10 organizations. And so as a result, the trends in terms of how volunteers engage with organizations has shifted very dramatically. And so for us, we see that in our volunteer base and how it is that they choose to spend time with us. And so for the first 65 years of our history, we had individual volunteers who would commit to all 5 weeks of a performance if they were working backstage. We do 5 weeks of performances per show. And now we've split those into 2. There's an A track and a B track. And as we continue to move forward, it's even harder to find people to work an A track and a B track. And so now it tends to be now we're going to be looking at a per week volunteer. And so significantly more training and significantly more work to make sure that everything is staffed fully. So for us, that's a big challenge in helping people understand what goes into producing the theater and also allowing them to still have a great time and not feel like they're working the whole evening away.
When you talk about an A track and a B track, are you talking about scheduling?
Yeah.
Scheduling, yeah. I mean, we have A track and B track cast members as well for depending on the runs. But yeah, for crew, by the time you talk about one of our full scale musicals, it's 90 performers and it's 90 volunteers a night, 20 on stage, 15 in the orchestra, the ushers, the backstage crew, the fly rail. We still do this. We don't have the computers.
Okay.
And so having all of that is a huge demand on a daily basis.
And not knowing that area very well, are there a lot of other, is there, not that you would ever have competition, Bryce,
Sure.
but for lack of a better word, is there competition in the area?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a Lord D regional theater about 1,500 feet from us, and so they are completing a new facility, and we are undergoing a $20 million renovation of our facility, and so there's a lot of theater done in a very different way in a very confined space. Not to mention our other community theaters and professional theaters that also exist here. So while we certainly don't compete with each other, there's certainly a saturation in the market. And so understanding how we each play a role is really important.
Is it difficult in terms of the material that you get for your shows? Do you do original works?
It can be very difficult. The community theaters are at the bottom of the totem pole, maybe other than high schools. And so especially coming out of COVID, a lot of the professional theaters were certainly sort of looking for the things that we would traditionally look at that make a lot of cash. And so we're limited in terms of the style of performance that we can sometimes produce. And so a lot of those titles that community theater would rely on were suddenly unavailable because they were being taken by the bigger regional theaters. So it's certainly been a challenge for us the last few years.
And Nico, in terms, for yourself, you have a producer. Are you, you mentioned earlier branding and all that. Are you hands-on when it comes to promotion of your product?
Yeah, I firmly believe did everyone see Tick Tick Boom? I don't want to ruin it, but
yes, of course.
Well, I wouldn't ruin it too much, but the scene of, him calling everyone the night before, trying to get them to come. Really nothing's changed. I truly think that musical writers, everyone I know who's got stuff going is also kind of an entrepreneur and at the same time, because you're truly building a business. Like every piece that you're adding on, first of all, you're going to work with these people maybe for the rest of your life. Like if you have a successful show, so they have to be people you're happy to be stuck in a car with and, racing to the airport, which happened to my director and I in Ohio, trying to get to a different airport. But so I keep using that as a benchmark. And yeah, I'm very hands-on with everything. I think that you have to be, but I also know that Liz Fleming, who's the producing artistic director for Out of the Box, we have a great relationship and I defer to her. in terms of managing her team and marketing team. And she brings me in and we're very collaborative in coming up with ideas because, we talk about sort of doing some fun social media content. I can write that in the voice of the show. And so it's like the more that gives people a sense of what they're going to come see when they come see the show, instead of some agency trying to make, guesses about how to talk about it. So I think that the more entrepreneurial you can be in this process, I think the better for the life of the project, which is hopefully ongoing.
So are you advertising essentially on Instagram and TikTok and,
Yeah. Instagram, out of the box, just has been launching an Instagram campaign. And then we're also looking at TikTok and working with existing theater creators on TikTok because, and who knows what's going to happen with TikTok because we know potentially get shut down. But in the meantime, there are these very niche communities that have spun up. There are people who are talking about the finances of theater or really specifically about choreography. And so the more niche content that you can make that excites people, especially if they're, in the New York area, people are excited to hear about it. You're not necessarily just throwing something at them that they don't care about.
And Nico, do you see making what you're doing available to community theaters, like, Bryce and Brian are running?
So you're saying the material itself or
the show itself?
I think the way that I understand it, that feels like the life of the show in the future. But I absolutely would love a scenario where it's done by community theaters, where it's done by, I don't know if it would be a high school show, but maybe if there's a junior version of it made, I think that there's lots of opportunity for that. I think that we have to, our next step after this would be our commercial production, because this is our nonprofit production, developmental. So we have to have that first commercial production, and then we can sort of talk about what does the rest of the life of the show look like. Are we looking at, Six has this wonderful life on cruise ships all over the place.
Yes.
So there's London runs of things. There's all sorts of ways. So again, you kind of have to be building it with all of those things in mind of different possibilities.
That brings up an interesting question, Nico. There are so many scenarios in terms of the future of where you go with this.
Yeah.
And was there, deep discussions or a lot of discussions on going the off-Broadway route? When having not seen the show yet, does the show have the legs of being a Broadway production? Some shows like Little Shop of Horrors is not really a Broadway type show. Godspell is not really a Broadway show. There are certain shows that are better suited in smaller venues rather than being a Broadway production, and they have longer shelf lives. Do you see this as eventually a Broadway production?
So it's a great question, because I think that everyone is asking themselves that question about everything right now, because I think that because in a post-COVID environment, what is a Broadway show? A Strange Loop was 7 characters, and we have 6, which is really a pop concert, which is 75 minutes long and 6 characters on the stage. So I think that if I had done this 10 years ago and you had asked me then, I would have said, this is like Little Shop. We're doing this, let's do it at the West Side. And I definitely think that is the kind of home that it's an 8-person show. It's got that intimacy but I think that nobody really knows what the future of Broadway looks like right now. And small cast and pop driven is actually really appealing to the producing community of Broadway. So I think it goes again back to building it the best that you can build it, especially with the team that we've put together is primarily Broadway talent, whether from behind the scenes to the cast. And I think when everyone's talking about what your challenges are, you're in New York, you're always, no matter what you're doing, you're competing with Broadway, because that's what's getting all of the attention, and whether you're off Broadway or off Broadway. So I think that, you've got to make the best thing you can make. And if it's good, people will respond to it and the market will tell you what you have. I know that wasn't a real clear answer to your question.
I know it was perfectly clear to me. I hope it was clear to everybody else. It was clear
Absolutely.
to me. Brian, with your new theater company, and you're just getting started, do you have a certain paradigm that you're working within? Do you have a mission statement for your theater of the types of theater that you want to present to your audiences? And do you know who your audience is yet?
Well, we do. We've discovered our core audience are basically older women. This is a retirement community down here, so we've got a lot of retirees, and they love the comedies and the dramas. So whereas like TOR has the musicals, we're too small a venue. I don't know that we'll ever entertain anything of a musical nature. So we'll pretty much stick to the straight plays. But that's we've only had one show run so far. This is our second one opening next week. So we're still organizing and determining, like policies and procedures for comp tickets is something, we don't have right now. I have the discretion of saying, okay, I can give a comp ticket. Somebody built the set. Hey, let's give them 2 comps, or somebody donated furniture. But we want to get, more of a policy with that in regard to, donations. How do we handle that? So, like I said, I'm going to want to talk to a lot of other theaters and find out what they're doing and start putting together policies with our group.
Bryce, do you have an audience that you're performing for as well, that you're programming for, that you see?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we're very fortunate to have an array of programs. So we have a readers theater audience that tends to be a little different than our sort of major season series with the other 2 theaters. So one of our venues tends to be a little more on what we sort of consider the cutting edge, and one of them tends to be a little more Broadway. And so in those ways, we have a couple different audience bases that we play to. But generally, I mean, I think, all of us play to the over 60 crowd, no matter where we are, because that tends to be the crowd that has the disposable income for theater at the moment. But yeah, I'd say same struggles always apply, which is, those political division within the country and understanding how we play our role as a community organization meant to serve both sides of the aisle is an interesting journey for us in opening up discourse that's positive and builds community, and not discourse that seems to divide.
One of the things that the Naples Players Theater did that I think is really laudable and interesting is during COVID, you had the people who would normally be doing making the costumes make masks, right? To distribute.
That's right. Yeah, we were very fortunate during COVID that we did not choose to lay off any of our staff, and part of that is because we own our facility outright, so we have no long-term structured debt. So our major expense was our staff, and so the first thing we did was pivot and say, what does the community need? And we called the hospital, and the hospital needed masks, and we have a lot of people who know how to sew. And the other thing the hospital needed was intubation boxes. At the time, COVID was brand new, and they didn't exactly know how it was spreading, but they did know they were intubating a lot of patients. And when you intubate a patient, I did not know this, but when you intubate a patient, all of the liquid that may be in their lungs is expelled. And they were concerned about their doctors being sprayed with this fluid that was being expelled from people's lungs. And so our scene shop worked with the infectious disease departments to create intubation boxes that would allow the doctors to put their hands within an acrylic box over the patient's head, intubate the patient, and contain the fluids. And so we started there, and then moved our way into drive-in movies in the parking lots so that people could stay within their confined little box of air, but wave at their neighbors next door, and all the way through to shows in the parks until we were able to reopen.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. We started the show calling it Creativity in an Age of COVID, right?
Sure.
We've evolved. This title is changing. I want to ask each of you, especially right now, everything is, it seems like every single day, everything's changing. Facebook, Twitter, is it good? Is it bad? We don't know what the future of TikTok is going to be. You people are going to, I want to ask each of you, and I'm going to start with you, Bryce. How is social media helping or hurting where you are right now in terms of your marketing and your promotion?
Social media is an interesting phenomenon for us. We definitely see generational divides, as you would imagine, between Facebook and Instagram. And there's another one that even us old elder millennials now are not using, apparently. And so we actually tailor messages pretty specifically to each of those different areas. So we see a pretty specific response on Facebook from parents of young people who will be engaging in educational programs. And we see a strong response from the people who participate in those education programs from Instagram. TikTok is its own sort of interesting generational divide. And so we try to use each of them in a unique manner, but we're very aware of the ways that I guess you would call them trolls can cause damage to the individuals who are participating in the art. And so we curate very carefully the content that is being provided to each of those constituencies.
Same question, Nico.
Yeah, I mean, social media is really core to the story that I'm telling. So I think that, and especially the millennial relationship to social media, the way we filter ourselves, and women in particular, I sort of mentioned this before, that it's really women focused, and that was one of the reasons this was a good fit for the nonprofit that we're working with out of the box, because that's part of their mission. But I would say we're so early still, because we haven't launched kind of like our huge social media campaign, and it's been under these protective, umbrellas of this nonprofit we're working with, or 54 Below, or whatever it is. So I think you just kind of have to be open to what happens and not invest your time, energy, money so heavily in one platform that could go away. I mean, do we all remember when Instagram didn't work for like 2 days and everybody, So I think that these are a very real thing, and things go out of date and new things come. I don't know, Bryce, were you talking about Discord? Because that's like the new, I heard Gen Z is like everyone's on Discord and they have fan communities on there.
I have heard of Discord. No, there's one apparently that's like Dumpster or something. It's something ridiculous.
Yeah, the dumpster fire, that one. I don't know. I haven't heard of that, but I think it's just knowing where your audiences are. I think that millennials tend to be on Instagram the most, and Facebook, but I'm always surprised. We did a reading of the show earlier in the year at Baldwin Wallace, which is where my director graduated from. And it was with students, and they were 19, 20 years old, and they walked in. Oh my God, this is so relatable. And I'm like, I just turned 40, and I'm like, you guys are half my age. Like, what is relatable about this to you? So you never know who is going to form a fan community around what you're doing, and you want to make sure that people have a place to gather.
Wow. Brian, same question.
Yep, and I know with our target audience, they're Facebook users. That's where we're going right now. I have a millennial counterpart, and she is doing the Instagram. And we're looking for the other venues. Like I said, I've reached out to some newspapers, because there are still people that read, even if it's online, the newspapers. So we're trying to find what's the best way to attract customers.
Okay. Now I have, we're going to run out of time, and you're all going to get a chance to have your final word today, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I've got one last question that I want to ask each of you. We're living in very strange times with people wanting to censor and ban and tell people what they should be watching and what they should not be watching. And I want to ask Bryce, I know that you are in the wonderful state of Florida. And Brian, you're in South Carolina, my home state, which I know a lot about. But Bryce, I want to begin with you. Have you dealt with any issues in terms of what you choose to present to your audiences in terms of censorship on any level?
You know, we have found that the people who are upset with a lot of the content that is trying to be censored are people who do not consume theater. And so any of the content that we've produced where somebody has had a problem with, generally those people have never actually seen the show or and didn't come to see the show. And so they're operating off of an assumption. So we've been very fortunate in that regard that we haven't had any of those sort of major responses from audiences within the organization. But I can see that it is a growing problem, and it is certainly a focus of both the board of directors and the staff as we move forward to see how it is that we serve our community best.
Great. Nico?
I haven't run into, because I've only presented material in California and New York primarily. I mean, I guess virtually I had the program with Beck Center for the Arts for my NAMP show, but this isn't something that I've run into myself, but I'm very aware of. So I'm curious to hear Brian's answer to this too.
Brian, is it something that you've dealt with in South Carolina? I know, I will say this, that I did MAME in 1974 in Conway, South Carolina, at the Theater of the Republic. And they put a disclaimer in the Conway newspaper, which at the time was called the Field and Herald, that the word ass and damn were used in the show. This was 1974. I also know that Emma Lou Johnson, I'm going to call her name out, when they did The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, fought them, and they would not allow them to put the word whorehouse on the marquee.
They could not put that word out there.
She would not allow it, and she fought them on putting that name on the marquee in Conway, and she won out. And so censorship was very much prevalent in my hometown. So Brian, I'll let you run with that. Brian?
Did he freeze suddenly? I think he might have frozen.
I think Emma Lou Johnson did that when I from the other
Yeah,
side.
I'm sorry, I lost you for a second. Yeah, we've discussed it as a theater. We won't change the words in the scripts. If the word is there, it's there, and we put a disclaimer out there that says they're over. But we've had no issues so far.
Oh, we may lose him. I hope he comes back. If he does, I'll bring him on. We are going to run out of time. Well, I think that, we may come in right on time today. Excuse me. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank you for your creativity and what you're bringing to new generations. Nico, I cannot wait to see your show. I'm going to be there somehow. I'm going to find a way to get there.
Yes.
And Bryce, thank you for all that you're doing. Brian is back. Brian, let's see.
There he is.
Let me remove this so we don't get any echo. Did you finish saying what you wanted to say, or Brian?
I think so. I just say we really haven't had any issues yet. We will let the customers know if there's any kind of words that might be offensive, but we're not changing anything.
Yes. But again, I want to thank you all for being here today. I'm going to give you each a chance to have your final word. It can be about anything that we spoke about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any final message that you want to end the show on. I'm going to give my final comments. Then I'll turn it over to you, Brian, and then Nico, Brian, and then Judi will have the final word today. I want to, as I do with every show, I I want to encourage everyone to pick up the phone and call a friend that you haven't spoken to in a while. I also want to encourage everybody to go out and see live theater. Not only to go out and see live theater, but if it's a possibility, there are community theaters in every community in the nation. Get out there and find out where they are. And if you're able to volunteer, either in person or financially, please get involved on any level, because these theaters are the future for all of our artists on any level. So if you're able to do that, that's great. As I said, pick up the phone, call a friend that you haven't spoken to in a while, and let them know how they matter in your life. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, a phone call, and let that person know how they've made a difference in your life. As my dear friend Sean Moniger says, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different sized boats. Some are in canoes, some are on yachts, some are in rowboats, some are pushing tugboats upstream. It doesn't matter what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side. And with that note, I'm going to leave the screen and I'm going to turn it over to you, Bryce Alexander. And Bryce, I can't wait to meet you in person someday. Thank you. And God bless all the work you do.
When you come,
Oh, thank you. I love that, Richard. That's fantastic. I can't believe we're already at the time. I'm extremely inspired by both of the other artists who are here, and you, Judi, of course. But I can't wait to hear what happens with Nico's musical and Brian, if I can be a resource of any kind, if the Naples Players can support you and your new theater, don't hesitate to reach out. I think what makes theater unique is its ability to bring people together. And I'm excited to see the ways that all of our different sort of communities of artists continue to reach out and make a difference in the greater world. And people forget that, nonprofit arts is $1 trillion industry in the United States. It's a bigger industry than transportation. And so when we really put our collective power together to impact our communities, we can make a really positive impact.
Terrific. Thank you, Bryce. And the Naples Players Theater are making a tremendous difference in this community because of all of the various things that you have for the community to be involved with and to benefit from. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Brian?
Yep,
Brian?
I would just say I echo both Richard and yep. I just like to echo, get involved with the community theater. If you want to be up on stage, try out. If you want to just usher or help out with set design, things like that, come on out and support us.
We definitely all need to pitch in. Nico.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to be on today and hang out with everyone and chat. This has been really great and inspirational, like everyone said. I guess what I want to leave everyone with just sort of thinking about is that in 2019, as of then, only 13% of shows on Broadway were written by women and 13% directed by women. So we're not in a place where we have sort of equal representation in terms of gender, marginalized genders, BIPOC community members. And I think that this is something we need to strive to and be thinking about in the types of work that is produced and that we're supporting. And we want to make sure that there's equity across the board. And so that's something that I've learned a lot about in this process. Being a woman telling a story about women somehow becomes political no matter what you do, even if it's a fun comedy, right? So think about that as you're supporting theater and support unheard and new voices and new work.
Terrific. Thank you. And good luck with the show.
Thank you.
And all of us need to find our ways that we can help out with our communities. They need us. They need our volunteer help. They need our dollars. They need us to show up. They need us to be audience. So find a way that you can be involved in a creative aspect of your own community. Find your spot in that and then give it all you've got, because you'll get far more back in return than whatever it is that you give. Trust me, I'm doing it. We'll see you in 2 weeks.